Number 3 out of 4. These are the videos where I'm setting up the video. This is another video in the Preaching and Worship Online Summit that I hosted with Convergence, where I brought in a digital minister each day as well. So now we're going to talk with Reverend Joe Nygard Owens, who is the digital minister at the Washington National Cathedral. Now, you may have seen the news from the cathedral. Joe is stepping down from that position and transitioning to another work area, role, world, but I think she still has a lot of fantastic things to say that really showcase how the cathedral has been and will continue to do digital ministry. So a lot of good stuff to learn here. So ready for another one? Here's Jim and Joe. I'm Jim and she's Joe. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to another video in this ongoing conversation about preaching and worship. This one will specifically look at the online aspect of things. We're with Reverend Joe Nygard Owens, who is the pastor for digital ministry at the Washington National Cathedral. Yes, that one, the one you've heard about, the one that a certain president sat in the front row of recently. All those fantastic things in that space. And Joe, you are the digital minister there, pastor for digital ministry. So maybe before we get into any other questions, what does that mean? What does it mean to be the pastor for digital ministry at that particular place?
Sure. So at the cathedral, we found during COVID that when many churches couldn't hold online worship services, their parishes said, hey, go worship at the cathedral. They're going to have a great service because just before the pandemic hit in the fall of 2019, the cathedral got a brand new camera system. So 19 cameras were installed around this building
Mm.
to give just amazing shots for shoot, I don't know all the terms, but fiber cable, all the things. It's amazing. So they discovered you get a better viewing experience online
Yeah.
than you do in person because they
I
can
love the
zoom.
overhead. The overhead shot of the organ is my favorite.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, people love the organ cam. They took out the main organ for repairs, and so they installed an electric organ over on the side, and they didn't have an organ cam the first week. It was a thing.
Uh,
It was a thing.
I love that that's the new controversy in a church. Not, the temperature's the wrong or you change the carpet color. It's the camera wasn't on the organ.
There's a lot of conversation also. We have a center cam of whether or not the center cam should be there because the center cam gives the straight on to the altar and the priests who are at the altar, but it also is right in the middle of things. So there's a lot of conversation online about the center cam.
Okay, let's just go there. I love that you brought that up because I've actually seen that. This is just turning into things Jim wants to talk about now.
Okay.
How do you feel about that camera? What's your thought on good, bad, anything and everything? I have opinions, but you are like officially in the water. So what do you think?
Well, I'm not the expert. I don't have a problem with the center cam. It in the space at first it's a little distracting because there's a camera that's just right there in front of you, whereas everything else is mounted up and around. Uh, but it just becomes part of the space. So you don't see it. You do see it when there are angled shots that kind of capture that whole area, but it does provide a nice front-on view of the clergy at the altar. And in the Episcopal Church, everything revolves around the Eucharist. And so that is kind of central. So it makes sense that you would have a camera that points there.
I love it, and I've actually taken screenshots of that camera on your live feed and shown it to people at Riverside because I'm convinced that prior to 2020, the trend was definitely small cameras tucked away, match the color of the pillar so no one notices it's there. It's this like spy camera aesthetic. Worshipping online was essentially peeking in through the windows and watching it happen. And I think post pandemic, or at this point in this ongoing reality of COVID we live in, I think cameras can and maybe should be more visible for two reasons. One, it reminds the people in the room that they're not the only people who are, quote, in the room. But I
Mhm.
even love that particular camera because maybe this is just an assumption, but I feel like it lets the person stand at the front and look straight ahead and literally look at all the people, not just the physical people in the room, but the people online and the people in the room in one single gaze. And that to me is the biggest win we could ever get in those spaces.
Yes. Yes. And I know when I'm preaching, uh, so we have screens everywhere and they're monitors that those on the platform can see. And so when I'm preaching, I try to you always try to notice which camera is pointed at you and how do you look both at the camera and at the people directly across
Yeah.
from it. It takes work.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's go there. You're just hitting I didn't
All
tell you any of my questions and you're just queuing them up perfectly. What does preaching and worship look like in online spaces when it's largely, facilitated in these physical spaces, but at a place like the cathedral, you have hundreds, thousands, I'm guessing, of people who are participating in that live moment on a Sunday. So, what does it or maybe even imagine what could it or should it look like? What could
Mm.
preaching and worship look like for those who are participating online, aside from everyone just getting your instinct to find the camera and be able to look at everyone at the same time?
Well, so when I first came, Jan Cope, who is the provost and has been on the clergy person who's been on staff the longest, she introduced me to a lot of different aspects at the cathedral and talked about how no, we it's important for us to preach to the camera because we have more than twice as many people, it just depends on the Sunday, worshiping online than we do in person. So in person, a small Sunday would be maybe 650 people, and then kind of a regular large Sunday would be closer to 1,000, and then Easter, Christmas we have around 3,000. That's all in the building. Online, a small Sunday is this is live concurrent views, which is a thing. I mean, lots of
That's
different ways.
devices. That doesn't count three people at home watching together. That just counts the one device. So you got to do some math already. But yeah, yeah.
These are all the people who have joined on at the same time. Peak number. A small Sunday is about 2,500. Yeah. And so, for our bigger services, when we have like very special guests like Senator Warnock or the seating of the presiding bishop, we're going to get closer to 5,000, sometimes more. So, yes, far more people online. So you're very cognizant. It's also people's experiences. So, what's unique about the cathedral versus other churches that do online ministry is half to two-thirds of our worshiping congregation in person, they're going to be visitors. So, usually you have, maybe if you're lucky, a quarter of your congregation is visitors, and the rest are people that you know. Here, you never know who you're preaching to. However, Washington, D.C. is a very particular context, and you feel it. As someone who travels in and out of D.C., you definitely feel the difference being in D.C. versus being outside of it. And so I'm very cognizant of both what it means to be there and what it means to be elsewhere in the United States or in the world. And so I bring what I know of the people, those who chime in on the YouTube chat from, we usually cover all continents except Antarctica. Um,
Not yet, anyway. Come on, Antarctica. Get on to the
One
live stream
Sunday,
on a
we had
Sunday.
one Sunday with the scientists who joined us. It was great. We had all the continents. But I mean, we have our regulars from all of these different countries around the world, and we often have almost an equal number of countries as we do states and territories, which is just mind blowing, all areas of the globe. And so bringing these perspectives, what I know of these people into the pulpit, I try to think about their situation. And there was my last time preaching, I even mentioned something that someone from our online congregation and I had been talking about. And we were at online coffee hour. I'm like, hey, did you hear me talk about that? She's like, yes, I did. I felt very convicted. Like, no, it's a good thing. It was a good thing. But it's fun to be able to draw that in. Since I don't get to be with the in-person congregation as much, how can we draw in the experiences of those who are outside? And since I'm the one who interacts with them most, I know those experiences. Unfortunately, the rest of our clergy see them at online coffee hour, but not a whole lot outside of that.
Oh yeah, that's just a paradigm shift for what it means to be a pastor and a clergy person, maybe even just a human in the world, recognizing these devices are not just a screen; it's a person on the other side of the screen, or hundreds, thousands of people on the other side of the screen, and it's one thing to just know them as a number, but how do you know them as people? That's a reality for people in the room. How do you see these
Yeah.
aren't just a congregation, but they're individuals, and getting to know those
Well,
people?
one of the things that I tell people is I may not have ever seen your face, but I have come up with what you look like in my head. Like you are a full person to me. And then I'll meet people, I'm like, you're not what I thought you looked like. But it's I don't even care that it's right or wrong, but it's helpful for me to see them as full people, to have these hair and eyes and skin and clothes, all of that to make them into full real people and to flesh them out because we're all infleshed, whether or not we're 2D or 3D.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So, how would you respond to someone who says that all this digital ministry and online church stuff is just a threat to people coming back to the building? That's not quite, I mean, you could say, oh, these thousands of people, they should just get their butts into church. And maybe that's a different scenario at the cathedral, but you've probably heard that in other contexts of, oh, the minute we put it online, no one's going to show up anymore. How do you kind of swim in those waters?
I think it's a both and.
Yeah.
And I will say, so the Sundays that I'm at home in Cleveland, 8:30, I leave my house and I drive down the hill down into Cleveland and go worship at my husband's congregation. I take communion in person. I give people
Hmm.
hugs. I shake hands at the passing of the peace. And then we finish and I drive back up the hill and hop online. There's value in both experiences. Certainly, one of the things that we found is more and more people have gone back to church. They have left the digital space. They actually, so here's what's interesting. We were looking at our analytics recently. We had fewer people online live during the service, but our numbers in terms of watching later in the day and throughout the week have stayed very consistent and even grown. And that says to me that people are going back to their local parishes and continuing to worship at the cathedral. There's so many reasons to worship online, so many reasons to be part of that. And many of the people that join us, they don't have a place. They're in very rural America. And so there isn't a progressive Episcopal congregation where they are. Uh, they have health issues. They can't physically leave the house, or if they can, they can't sit in a pew for an hour and a half for various reasons. So there's so many reasons, but then there's also the reason of every time I sit down at my keyboard and start typing in the YouTube chat, I am overcome with gratitude because what what a joy it is to worship with people around the world. I mean, this is truly the body of Christ. We are all over the world worshiping together. That is the body of Christ. And
I
many
love it.
people who aren't able to get out wish that they could, but find such great solace in what we're able to offer.
Yeah. I always love to say there is no pew too far from the front that is excluded, including the comfy couch in your home. Now that gets into
Yeah.
sacramental theology and who can do communion, and I won't go there in the Episcopal
Uh,
waters because I know what
yeah.
that already
Yeah.
is in that space. But the sense of including people who aren't in the
Yeah.
confines of the four walls. Church has never been a building anyway. Why are we doubling down on it being a physical space when that's always been just a barrier holding us back from how church is supposed to exist in our daily lives? And online ministry really literally allows our daily lives to be saturated with worship and with all these things that we're doing and about. Yeah, I
Exactly.
love that. What does a Sunday morning for someone who's joining online look like at the cathedral? Like what's the possible experiences someone has? I think you've already mentioned that it's more than just the live stream. There's the live chat happening. There's coffee hour, you said, but give me the whole like lay of a Sunday for someone who's in Southern California or Sri Lanka who wants to participate with the cathedral.
Well, you kind of just named it all. Uh, so we start with our YouTube chat that pairs along with our online service. It's really, I'm going to say 10% of our online viewers join in the chat, but it's a really wonderful group and people know each other. They ask for prayer requests. They follow up after each other. If there's severe weather, they're going to say, "Oh, Anne in Arkansas, how did you do with the tornadoes that came through?" And she'll say, "Oh, well, I was fine, but my neighbors got hit." Or, so we have conversations like that. This People are known to each other. And we answer questions of, we have especially post service of prayer for the nation when Bishop Mary Ann Buddy spoke so eloquently and bravely, we've had a lot of new people join us and who might not know the Episcopal tradition. So we're answering lots of questions about the Episcopal tradition because it's unlike other things unless you've been in a Catholic church. Uh, so it's a really warm and inviting group, but plenty of people choose simply to watch it on their televisions and not engage the chat. And that's totally fine as well. We have online coffee hour every Sunday following the service, and periodically we'll announce it in the large congregation and it's always a competition for space with announcements, but we always announce it on the YouTube chat. And we usually get between 30 and 50 people for our online coffee hour. And the preacher for the day comes and chats with us, and we break into small groups and get to know each other and have more conversation about the sermon. And of course, one of the biggest times is prayer requests, because this is the chance to pray for each other and to know what's happening and how to hold one another throughout the week. Um, Throughout the week, we have morning prayer services. So this is a blessing of COVID. In person, when they had morning prayer prior to the pandemic, they would get 15, 20 people. Now well, when I first came, I think they told me it was like 1,200 people within an hour or two. And then by the end of the day, it's about 4,000 or 5,000 people who have seen them. So there's this large group of people who watch the morning prayers. Those are Monday through Friday, except during Lent, and they're every day of the week during Lent. So that's another way that people join in. Our Evensong, we have Evensong that's live streamed Sunday evening, but none of the rest of the Evensongs during the week are live streamed,
Okay.
though there are plenty who wish they were.
Yeah. And
But
then
there's
you've all dabbled in like an online space and everything. I've secretly joined. Well, not so secretly. I've joined, so I get all the updates and emails from it. But say a bit about what that is and like why that is.
Yeah. So it's still under development. I started it and then got overwhelmed with lots of real life things, so I had less time to devote to the online things. But we have an online community called the Cathedral Close Online, and we have about 650 members right now. And
Which is the
through
size of a healthy church, by the way. Let's not say just six. You say that like it's a small number. Yes, you've been just saying big numbers, but you have 650 people who have connected in this dedicated online space just around the digital work that you are a part of at the cathedral. That's incredible.
cathedral numbers are very warped. They do not connect to any other kind of church reality. So there's this sense on the cathedral, like, well, you have 650, but it really needs to be a lot bigger. And I'm like, okay, I'll work on it. So anyway, we can cut all that out. um, but so in our online community, we have this big community space where people can share different things. We have times for reflection, so different seasons. We had a season of gratitude for what's that? Advent. That's the season I was looking for. I did some epiphany practices to help get us grounded. This was early January before everything kind of started happening. So, like, what are the practices we need to ground us to prepare us for what's coming? And now with Lent, I'm posting kind of follow-ups to what I'm teaching in my online Lenten class. Uh, there's a chapel to offer prayer requests. And we're going to start, we have some planning meetings to start developing some new fun things with more live content and some more specific things to happen within the Close Online.
But I just love that you've helped kind of facilitate this online space, which is something every church could replicate, regardless of size, regardless of staff specificity for digital ministry. And the beauty of it is, like a space like the Cathedral Close, any of those online spaces, it's not like, well, you can only access this if you live far away. It's like, no, everyone can benefit from that experience.
Right.
It's not just for the people who only participate via the live stream. It's for every human who wants to have that additional level of connection. And I know you all use Mighty Networks, which is great.
Mhm,
Other churches use Circle. I know people who
mhm,
use Discord. I'm
mhm.
currently figuring out which of those three do I want to experiment with at Riverside. I don't know yet, so I need to talk more with you and Natalie and Nathan to have you all just go head to head and tell me why yours is the best. Coming soon. Um, but I just love the intentionality around saying let's church should never just live to Sunday. Church should never just
Mhm,
be the emails we send you. Church should
mhm.
be able to be accessed and participated in whatever capacity you want. And in our world today, that often involves these things. So why aren't we being intentional about how the way we are church exists in the ways we are just human in the world now? And I just think it's so essential. I'm so love that it's happening.
Well, and I'm going to put it so in some ways it's like social media, but not on a social media platform. But here's my pitch for doing it on one of those platforms versus on Facebook or one of those, because you own the content. It's huge. You are not subject to the whims of the technology world. You own the content. Yes, you pay, but you you are not the product when you pay. You get the product. So that's the big difference. So that's why I'm a big fan of, and in Christianity we always have intentional communities. This is just another form of intentional community.
Which I love that you just made that connection, because so many of the things that I find myself talking about with people in digital ministry, it's like we've been doing this all along. We're just now doing it in this context. We're not doing anything new, like having someone in the live chat to say hello to people. Hello, churches have had greeters for a little while now, at least a couple generations. It's not a forever thing, but it's not a new thing either. So it's just a matter of saying, how do we do what we've always done and continue to do it in the world around us, rather than waiting for the world to go back to what it used to be 60 years ago? Because last I checked, time goes forward, not backwards. So we're stuck where we are and where we're going, and we can't go
Preach it.
back to where we were. Yeah.
Yep. No, one of my favorite sermons, and I heard this 15 years ago, was maybe something like that. Otis Moss III from Chicago. Uh, shoot, and I can't remember the official, but it's um, an 8-track church in an MP3 world, because this was, 15 years ago. But we're stuck in this way of doing things that is the 8-track world, and technology has moved forward. How do we be the same people just with updated technology and an updated operating system?
I'm googling it now. I'm trying to find the sermon because
It
there's at
was
least
for a
a.
conference. I'm sure he preached at other places
Oh
too,
yeah.
but
There's an updated version in 2023. He's used the same idea. We have 8-track churches in a streaming world. That's good
there you
for the
go.
way we're, yeah. But it's still that sense of
Yeah,
that technology in this reality. And it's not like we're saying the 8-track is bad.
no.
It just is not the way people currently engage at scale. Some people might still have their retro collection of vintage 8 tracks. Good for them. Some people say if it doesn't have the scratches and hisses of a record, it's not really music. Great. Some people say if it doesn't have, pages, it's not a book. Yet at the same time, I just, listen to the latest Hunger Games book as an audiobook. Does that not count as reading? Anyway, this is a whole other diatribe.
Yeah, yeah, I can get into that one too. Yeah.
Okay, Joe. One last thing, because you and I could have the risk of talking way too long about this stuff,
Pretty
which is a
good.
great problem. If a pastor is at a church that's smaller than yours, which is, let's be honest, a lot of them, and they wanted to take serious
Mhm.
how the life of a church community, how preaching and worship must include some sort of an online intentionality, what would you say to them? They don't have the budget to hire you. They don't have the budget to install 19 cameras. But what would you say they should be even thinking or looking towards to just have that reality of the world? We not an 8-track church industry. How can they be where they are with what they have? What would you say?
I think the most successful translation, it's to me, it's not about what platform you hop on or what gimmick you use. It's how do you become your most authentic self in a digital space. So if you are a church that loves spirituality, then take your spiritual classes online. How do you do them in a way that impacts people daily? That can be sending text messages, that can be your online community, that can be all sorts of different ways. Um, but take what it is that feeds your church in person and then figure out from there how that looks online. So if you're a social justice church, what does that mean? How are you going to bring people in? Now, of course, yes, having worship, because our online worship is kind of our new doormat. It's no longer just the website. People are going to check us out online before they step in person. That's really important. And having, as you mentioned, greeters online to welcome people and give them a good experience. But if we're taking it to the next step, um, it is figuring out. It's also knowing who's out there. Knowing so in the business world, knowing your audience, figuring out who they are, what attracted them to you, and then how can you interface. But I really believe that if we follow those passions and where the spirit is leading us and just let it extend from that 8-track world into the streaming world, that we're going to find the ways.
Yeah.
If the passion is there, we're going to find the ways, and that's what's going to take off and lead you to new opportunities.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I love it. Oh, I'm so glad that we've had this conversation personally, and I'm guessing a few people
Yeah.
watching are having incredible benefits as well.
I
We're all
always love
scribbling
talking
notes.
with you, Jim.
Same, Joe. All right, everybody. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody. More videos. Keep watching the next round of these, and we'll talk to you all on the next one. Oh, seriously. I mean, I know I love these, but I hope you do too. I think they're a lot of fun. Would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Leave a comment. You know the drill by now. Are you using a little third-party social network app for your community? Which one? That's been a thread in a couple of these so far. Yeah, I'm still figuring that out myself. I think it's going to be Discord. I'll make a whole video on that later. But there you go. See you next time.